Welcome.
State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel and the defendant. The jury is not present. Mr. Jackson. Ms. Hicks.
Oh, it's funny. I just chatted. I thought I was chatting as me, and it looks like I'm chatting as homeschool ground zero. That's a first. Let's see.
Or in the alternative suppress statements.
Okay, so Britta, KR, welcome. Lewis Cox, Calypson's Vixen, Amber, good to have you here. Nina, Christy, hello. Perpetual Autumn, Jesse, Mini Duck, Little Love, KR, Amy, good to see you guys. Just pulled into my ground and my phone is blowing up. I'm just catching up right now. I'm watching the motion.
Court must enter a judgment of acquittal if there is not substantial evidence to support a conviction. The case law defines substantial evidence as that which reasonable persons could accept as sufficient to support a guilty verdict beyond a reasonable doubt.
So
Offense is asking for this court to enter a judgment.
They asked for a judgment of acquittal from the judge.
The first is that there's been a general failure to present substantial evidence to support a conviction. The second
so
is that there's been
I'm watching right here, trying to keep.
The state can establish jurisdiction.
Oh, jurisdiction.
And finally, a motion to dismiss based on the doctrine of corpus delicti.
Yeah, we have never seen this. I told you guys. I said this is. I thought this was going to happen.
The state has not presented any substantial evidence that Alyssa is deceased and that Mike caused her death. The state's case rests entirely on speculation, character evidence, and rumors. This entire trial has been about Alyssa and Mike's relationship, what kind of teenager Alyssa was, whether they had an acrimonious relationship, whether Mike was a bad parent, or if he was paranoid. There has not been a shred of physical evidence in this case. No body.
You need to fix the sound.
No crime scene. Crime scene. No blood spatter.
Is that just me?
No body parts found in the house. No murder weapon. No evidence in the houses or in the car to suggest that a murder took place.
So this is what I'm surprised they didn't have anything.
The fact that Mike's home was searched 7 years after Alyssa's disappearance has everything to do with the Phoenix Police Department's failure to investigate this case.
That is crazy.
Mike was the one who pushed the police to take a more aggressive approach to find his daughter. He did his own investigation. He worked to draw attention to his daughter's disappearance.
That's how the feed sounded. It's awful.
Now, the state points to Mike's relationship with the Phoenix Police Department as evidence of his guilt. He was either too involved or not involved enough in the police investigation. The state cannot use Mike's involvement with this investigation, or lack of involvement, as a sword and a shield.
Right.
Now, although defense does not have to prove innocence, there is sufficient evidence to show that Alyssa ran away. There was testimony from Alyssa's family and friends who described her as a free spirit, someone who was impulsive, stubborn. Mike was strict and controlling at times, and Alyssa did not do well with rules. Alyssa had a bank account that was set up by her father, and there's no record of at least 5 months of her paychecks being deposited into that account. Alyssa had a fight with her boyfriend and cheated on him right before she went missing.
I'm going to move to higher ground, make sure my signal's good.
There was, of course, the call with Aunt Lynette that happened at least 6 weeks before Alyssa's disappearance, where she said, "You can always come see me."
Who's speaking now? We've got the defense attorney.
And then the call from California a week later.
I picked up right when the prosecution rested.
The state has not presented any evidence that Mike had the requisite the mens rea that's required for a conviction of second-degree murder. The state must prove either, 1, that Mike intentionally caused the death of another person, 2, that he caused the death of another person by conduct which he knew would cause death or serious physical injury, or 3, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to human life, he recklessly engaged in conduct that created a grave risk of death and thereby caused the death of another person.
Yeah,
they
just did not meet these
that disregarding
points.
it was a gross deviation from what a reasonable person in the defendant's situation would have done. We sat through 5 days of trial and the state has not presented any evidence to prove that Mike acted intentionally or recklessly to cause the death in this case. There's no confession, no evidence of a plan, and no evidence of how a death occurred.
Okay, so she's saying exactly what kind of YouTube stream is this? Sorry, greeters. As she's going on, because you guys listened to this already, I'm just catching up. We've said this all along. They did not prove these elements. It was almost like they didn't put any effort into proving some of the elements, and they have to do that.
No murder weapon located in Maricopa
Look at
County.
take for example the Zachariah Anderson trial. Look, at least in the prosecution there, they listed the evidences of why they thought that he was dead, why they they at least proved they addressed the issues that they needed to, and here they have.
Erroneous convictions. Arizona courts have recognized that jurors often take confessions or inculpatory statements at face value. And to be clear, Mike has not confessed.
Yeah, there was zero confession.
However, the state has elicited several statements during trial which it believes demonstrate consciousness of guilt. For example, the union killed Alyssa, or come to my deathbed.
Don't do that.
The corpus delicti doctrine requires that the court find, separate and apart from Mr. Turney's statements, that the state has
So,
presented
Casey,
direct or
I agree.
substantial
I,
evidence
like you, think that something is wrong here and that Mike probably has some involvement. Unfortunately, that's not the standard that needs to be met by the jury to convict him for murder. And they just have not met that standard.
Suicide, accident, or somebody else's criminal conduct.
Is Mrs. R.A.
For the
really here?
reasons mentioned previously,
she
the
is.
state has failed to do that.
Hey, Mrs. R.A., I got here safely. I was going to call you, but news broke.
The corpus
Sorry.
delicti before it rests. The court should direct an acquittal.
Okay, so directing an acquittal. This is not throwing the case out. This is not, like. So a judgment of acquittal is where the judge basically stands in place of the jury and says, we don't need to go to a jury. I can already tell you, you haven't met the standard set by the law. And he has to look at that in the light most favorable to the prosecution. So after doing that, here we're ready to hear the state's response here. But oh man, it was Gandalf that did the state's response. I bet that was awful. I mean, good. I think it was good.
Your Honor, we would submit that the law does not envision a person who murders someone simply because they have disposed of the body where it cannot be found.
Pause here. Hang on 1 second.
Simply because they have managed to commit this crime without leaving physical evidence.
Okay, so there's some words
There
being
is
tossed around like dismissal
circumstantial
and things like that.
exists to
You did say
escape
dismissed?
being held accountable. That is not what the law envisions.
Right, I believe it's an acquittal. They asked for a judgment of acquittal.
First of all, and I'm really not sure which order to take this in.
I'm going to have to listen to what the judge says here.
I'll start with the Rule 20.
Okay, first of all, since we know this happened, I'm going to skip through Gandalf because he is less than exciting to listen to, as you guys know. Let me find a place I can sit down. I'm out here in the boonies of
I'm going to read some
Western North
quotes from
Carolina.
some cases that you've read. The relevant question,
Okay.
I'm going to cite some from a case, State
He
versus
talks.
Derek Gerlaw.
Okay. Trying to find what the judge said. Go to the judge. Judge, a good
Turning
job in this
first
case.
to the corpus issue, the case law says that that the term confession can be used interchangeably from statements that are made throughout the case.
He is now excused. Please be seated.
Okay, so the jury just got brought back in, I believe.
We are back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel and the defendant and the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, during the break, I had to make some legal rulings, and as a result of my rulings, the trial is now over. You are now discharged as jurors, and the admonition is now lifted. You can talk
missed
to
the ruling.
anybody
I have
that
to
you
back
want
up.
to
Sorry.
talk to about the case, but you don't have to talk to anything for the record from the defense. All right. I will order the defendant released as to these
Yeah, gotta
charges
back up.
only.
Holy cow.
Finding it is ordered granting the court is
I'm
deciding
sorry, I'm backing up here.
that Alyssa's death.
And while that is true, the
Okay,
evidence
catch, I
must
backed
be
up just a
more
little bit,
than
backed up to the end of
scintilla
the,
evidence,
it's a
which
bad
is
time to go camping,
all
Eric,
that the
you're right.
state has presented here. Thank you.
Okay, so
Thank you.
prosecution just finished their address, and
I
here's
have
the judge.
considered the issues raised by the defense and the state's responses to those.
Hey, Antron, welcome.
Taking
Let me
the
listen here one
corpus
sec.
issue first, the court has to consider the evidence that is before this jury
I'm going to speed this up.
and exclude from that consideration the defendant's statements. While there are cases that do suggest that the corpus rule is limited to confessions, Ms. Hicks is right. There are other cases that use the term statements. So, when looking at this case without the defendant's statements, the court has to make two findings. Is there a reasonable inference that Alyssa is dead, or could the jury make a reasonable inference that Alyssa is dead? And the second question is does the court or the finder of fact have the ability to make a reasonable inference that Alyssa's death resulted from the defendant's conduct? The court has considered the evidence presented without the defendant's statements.
Without.
The court finds that there is a reasonable inference that Alyssa is dead. I find that this court could make that reasonable inference,
Okay.
and that the jury could make that reasonable inference. The second question is there a reasonable inference that Alyssa's death resulted from the defendant's conduct? There is really no testimony about the defendant's conduct
Zero.
in relation to Alyssa's death. The defendant raised Alyssa, and the court is not here to decide if his parenting style was appropriate or inappropriate. The court's not even deciding if the defendant killed Alyssa or not. The court is deciding whether or not a reasonable inference from the evidence that has been put before the jury, excluding his statements, shows that a reasonable inference can be made that the defendant caused or the defendant engaged in conduct that resulted in Alyssa's death.
Yeah, and then on that,
The court
it's
is
out.
unable
It's
to make
over.
that finding. It is ordered granting the defendant's motion to dismiss.
Give motion
on the corpus
to
delicti.
dismiss based on corpus delicti.
The second question is whether or not substantial evidence exists to warrant a conviction. In some ways, I could just skip this and say the issue is moot because of my ruling on the corpus issue, but for purposes of the record, I'll make the finding anyways. There is evidence in the case. I am not here to suggest that the state has put forth no evidence. There is evidence. The court has to determine whether or not there is substantial evidence. And the evidence doesn't have to be direct evidence, it can be circumstantial evidence.
There was
There
no
is
direct evidence.
circumstantial evidence in the case. The question then becomes, is it substantial that would warrant a conviction for second-degree murder? The court has considered the evidence and finds that substantial evidence does not exist to warrant a conviction. It's ordered granting the defendant's motion for a Rule 20 judgment of acquittal.
Okay, so judge says dismissed and judgment of acquittal. So he's dismissed it, but then he...
I will order the defendant released as to these charges only. Mr. Turney, you're going to be signing for a copy of your release. I'll bring the jury back in and just let them know that their jury service is over. Before we do that, anything for the record from the state? Anything for the record from the defense?
Wow. This
All right,
is a
Angela,
huge loss on the part of the state. Honestly, what flabbergasts me, and I've said this all along, I think something's wrong here. I think Michael Turney, there's enough for me not to want to hang out with him, right? I wouldn't want my family to hang out with him. There's just weird things happening there. But the state didn't have the evidence. They didn't have the ability to prove that what had, they were charging with had happened. So honestly, this should not have come to trial. And we've said this over and over as we talk through this, that it was, sorry, I'm watching these kids. Look what they've built here. They built a merry-go-round out of poles and rope. We'll show that later here. But yeah, so the judge has thrown him out. He's free now. There were no other charges he was being held for. Debbie, this is the first for our channel. We thought we would see it before, but it didn't happen. But yeah, this one, I'm just stunned. I want to go back and listen to it. Obviously, I missed I missed the last of the evidence that we heard this morning. But wow, just incredible. The state deserves to lose this, though sadly most addicts called it. CG, thank you. Red Pen, welcome. This is a huge first. I'm going to go ahead and close the iPad because it's stealing juice from my phone, so I can go back and I haven't even set up my tab. I pulled in and jumped out of the car and grabbed my bag and ran up the hill to get a signal. Oh my goodness, guys. So that is another first for the channel for sure. What are the charges? Let's see, who said that? Shells. I guess he has other charges or something else. I'm not familiar of any other charges. He already served time for a prior conviction on the explosives that he had, but I'm not sure about any other charges. Send love to Sarah. You know, honestly, my heart breaks for Sarah, for the family. I would love to have Sarah on here and talk to her, because what she knows, if the jury got to hear what she got to hear, if all that was admissible evidence, I think we would have a very different situation. Unfortunately, the way they had it, they didn't have, they weren't, it wasn't in a form they could admit. They couldn't get past the rules of evidence to allow what she knows and has heard and has put together, and a lot of it's still circumstantial, to be able to be considered by the jury. So he's out now. Yes, he's ordered released. He was out before this trial or was in jail. He was in jail, but only for this. He's a free man. And you're right. Yeah, Rudy, I believe she's dead as well. I mean, there's no evidence that's been, presented that a reasonable person could conclude that, based on the type of person she was and how she lived her life and the circumstances that she disappeared in, that she's no longer with us. Kitty Kitty Bang Bang. Hi. How disappointing for Sarah. Hope you're not a tick magnet. Thank you. I seriously, my heart breaks for Sarah. Can he be retried? No, that would be double jeopardy. If some evidence came out, say for instance a video surfaces of him actually committing the murder and disposing the corpse, there's a possibility he might be able to be tried for some other charge relating to that. But as far as second-degree murder, you can't be charged for the same thing twice. That would be double jeopardy. But maybe he might be charged for, desecration of a corpse, or moving a body, or concealing evidence, or there could be other things associated with a crime that still might get him to serve some time. It's obviously not going to have the same sort of penalty that a murder charge would carry. He jumped up out of the wheelchair. Oh man, yeah, I can imagine. You think that was just a ploy? Or if her body is found? No, even with their body found, they would need other evidence. They would need something else to prove there's a crime. Yeah, he served 7 years in prison already. Yeah, watch Sarah's podcast. I can't wait to hear. I hope I can get in touch with her and have her on. Jenny, yeah, this is tough. I mean, I'm trying to observe this from a couple different standpoints, right? First of all, just from a purely analytical side, as we are, somebody who enjoys watching crime trials play out, criminal trials play out. I like seeing new things. I like seeing how it works, and the fact that we've never had a judgment of acquittal before, or a judge dismissing it at this point. That was neat to see, but at the same time, there's a whole family here who was hoping and praying for justice, and have been fighting for years, decades, for that, and they now go home with nothing. That is just incredible. Jury members' heads must have exploded when dismissed. Yeah, they walked in there like, we're about ready to deliberate. 2 of us are going to be alternates, the rest are going to deliberate, and now nothing. I don't know if Ryan was in court or Kristen. I think Ryan was only available later on in the week, so he was going to be there for the verdict. What's going on with DB? 1 minute I heard DB was going back to trial. Now I hear that EP dropped her charges. Really? I thought he took a plea deal. Okay. All right. Ryan was not in court. Yeah, Yeah, many things are happening. This is a crazy week of all the weeks to be gone. I'm setting up. I have I have good cell coverage here, so I have all my equipment. I can even set up my live stream so that I have picture-in-picture, you know, sort of like you're used to seeing me. Obviously, my courtroom background is gone because I now have Forest, but we've got better mics, sound tables. You know, we can do everything but the sound effects, and I guess yeah, we can't do the sound effects or the chat on screen. That's the only thing I can't do right now. Pantuful, thank you very much for the super chat, for the super sticker. I think it is. Thank you. Mobile acts weird. It does. Carrie, thank you, thank you. I'm glad you got to watch it. I apologize. I wish I was had been able to stream the whole thing for you. It's I I I love I love true crime, right? I love what I do. As you guys know, you guys are the same way. You're built out of the same cloth, you know, cut from the same cloth, I think they say. And but at the same time, I love serving with youth and helping youth programs. And once a year, these different programs go out camping. It turns out that the way it worked this year, that 3 were happening all within a short space of time. So this is my third and final. I'd call it vacation, but really it's not. It's a working vacation. But I'm excited to be here with these guys. I'm excited to get set up and follow some stuff. I want to follow some of what's happening with Sarah Boone. We're obviously waiting for a letter to drop there. That's probably going to happen this week. Whoa, Tinsley won a $15 million settlement from Parker's. Things are blowing up. Is it hot there? It's 80. Is Mrs. RA still on? If Mrs. RA is on, it's 105 here. If she's not, then it's about 84. Let's see. Okay, I've got some cool things. These guys literally, they built a huge merry-go-round out of ropes and logs, and it's fully functional, can hold multiple people, like 4 people on it. We've got a lake, swimming. We're going whitewater tubing, or maybe just tubing tomorrow, probably in the rain. But I've got to get my tent and everything set up, and we'll try to. My pants are on fire. Sorry, I'm sorry. Wow. Get back to camping. Lee, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mrs. R.A. Lee, you're right. She's probably. I talked to her on the driver. I talked to my son as well, so it's not a complete surprise. But man, this is good stuff. What is the next trial? I've got to watch a little bit because it's going to be hard to pick up a new trial while I'm here. But we're going to talk about some of the court cases that are coming up, specifically with Sarah Boone. That's what I'd like to address, and I look at some of the letters. I do think that her new letter is going to drop this week. When it finally posts, we want to take that live and go with that as well. Jenny G, I will prevent forest fires. Thank you. I'm making the boys start fires with flint and steel. No lighters here. Amber, thank you very much. Michelle. Portland Trailblazers, how long are you camping till? I'm going to be leaving Friday morning. So it's, is it Monday today? I think it's Monday, so I'll be leaving Friday morning, or sooner if the food's bad. What's the new date on Boone? The new date currently is the 24th, but that is going to push. There's no way that, I mean, they're halfway there with their expert. I believe the expert has written the report and just hasn't turned it over to them yet. So I think the judge is going to work with them to make sure the expert gets paid what they want, and then they're going to get the report, and then it's going to be actually the prosecution that's going to request more time, in addition to the defense. So it's just going to take some time. I'm ready for Sarah. Picky, you and me both. Adriel, what does it mean when the judge enters a verdict? It basically means that the judge they pause the trial right when the state is finished presenting evidence. Okay, so the state rests, they sit down, the defense stands up and says, Your Honor, they didn't do what they needed to do. Thanks, screeners. I'll watch for pickle stands. They say, Your Honor, the defense didn't meet what they needed to do. They didn't meet each element of the charge has to be met, and they say, Your Honor, it didn't happen. In this case, the judge looked at it and looked at each element and said, You're right. I have to dismiss this, and then I'm going to make the other ruling because there were multiple motions. So he did dismiss it, and then he also made the motion saying that it's a judgment of acquittal. So I don't know how you can dismiss and acquit in the same trial, because the clerk has to enter that somehow. I imagine that will probably be entered as an acquittal. or if it's dismissal. I wonder if that's with prejudice. We'll have to look and see how the filing comes out. Sarah Boone will be happy. We'll be waving Happy New Year to the judge on day one of her trial. You think it's going to be all the way to next year? Every time you can see a squirrel, think of you. Georgia, thank you very much. It's going to be interesting. First of all, thank you guys. It is awesome to have you here. I'm sorry I missed this live with you guys. We're going to have more trials and more good stuff coming up. I've been talking it over with my wife and doing some studying. I want to make the stream better. I want to improve things that would make things better for you guys to make it what you guys want, and still at the same time meet the requirements for to keep me legal and make sure that the channel can go on for a long time. I like it to be built for duration, not for a short sprint and then over. No September trial. I have doubts the Boone's going to be on the 24th. It's not going to happen. And I cannot see that unless the judge plays hardball, and this could happen. The judge could say, look, we've delayed it long enough, and I told you that you might have to go to trial with a defense that you don't like, which would mean no expert witness. So there's still a chance that he could do that. I'm surprised that they've gone so far down that. I would be surprised. They've gone so far down that route, and then for them to suddenly say, now change your defense. What are you going to come up with it if you can't use the battered wife aspect? Let's see. Give the craziest Judge Doro. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys. You can't top awesome. Picky, there are things I could do better. And one of them I think probably is providing more of information and lead time as to what I'm looking into, what trials I've got my eyes on. I've been hesitant to do that because, as you know, dates change up at even at the last moment. But if we start calendaring a little bit better and have a couple trials that are like on the back burner that are approaching, then as they get closer, you guys will be able to do research on them. You'll be able to give some input as well. Am I an Eagle Scout? I am an Eagle Scout. What's the difference between an acquittal and a dismissal? Acquittal is a judgment, meaning it's it's like a not guilty. Where dismissed means the case is thrown out or dismissed, I guess. What is the next trial? Michelle, I don't know yet. You just heard the same channel as we did. We love your channel. Thank you, Debbie. He dismissed on the one point and granted the request of the acquittal. I don't know how he can grant an acquittal in a case that has been dismissed, and that's the order that it happened. Either one of those rulings was enough to end it. So I'm surprised. Maybe it's just the order that they made the motions, that he addressed them. We'll see you, Tish. Thank you so much. Can it be brought again? No, it cannot. Thank you, Amber. We'll talk in mod chat about some options for trials. Sarah Boone case, Michelle, we're gonna talk Sarah Boone this week and some of the live streams that I'll be doing here from the campground. I've got all my gear. I just checked my live view encoder, and I've got 4 solid modem connections, so I can push a 4K signal out of here if we need to. It'll be horizontal again. It's gonna have multiple views, so I can have several. I think I can have 2 cameras and a computer and my face all connected at the same time. So we're gonna have all that. So we're gonna run that. Now I need to run about 150 feet of extension cord to my campground. So we're gonna take care of that. All right. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. I realize this is quick. I don't mean to pop in and run, but I saw what happened, and this is awesome. I'm camping in a tent, Picky. It is real life camping. I've got 2 little pads underneath me, and other than that, it's just the rocks. So was a first. I'm so glad we got to see it. We'll have to talk about it more as we sort of mull it over. Also like to talk to. Hopefully, we can talk to the detective and Sarah in this trial. I'd love to get their take, and obviously Sarah might take some time to be able to be ready to talk about it like this, or she might want to go live first on her podcast. We'll approach her and see if she wants to do that. Tents scare me. Left one open once and I almost got my bread. Yeah, there are bears here, so we'll see. All right. S'mores, have fun. All right, guys, let's let's end it here. I see there's 528 of you in here. The big news, if you're just popping in, is that Michael Turney case was dismissed and he was acquitted. It's a long story for why both of those happened, but it's over. He's a free man now. He was held in custody, but that's done. As you know, he will sleep tonight in his own bed. So they cannot bring these same charges again because he's been acquitted of them. So that's remarkable. We did sort of call it on the channel as we watched this happen. The state just didn't seem to be addressing the case the way they needed to, especially the elements of the charges. And it left enough out there that the judge says this can't go to a jury. There's not enough evidence. They haven't met that standard. So thank you. I appreciate all you. My mods are absolutely fantastic. Am I surprised at the verdict? No, Picky. I told you I thought this was what was going to happen. Does he still have a bed after all these years? I imagine he does. What time will you come on? Christy, I'm going to try to keep my regular schedule, maybe a little bit earlier. It depends what our schedule is. I haven't seen when we go to the river, to run the river. But, hey, Tyler. What's up? I'm live. Give me a minute. Better if the camera pointed to it in the vent. Anyway, thank you guys. This is awesome. I can't wait to see you guys tomorrow and talk a little bit more about that, as well as some of the Sarah Boone letters and things like that. So thank you. We'll be live again tomorrow. Make sure you have the bell rung. Tonight when you go home, please hug the people you love, smile at someone to make their day just a little bit better, and please stay safe to go live again, which will be tomorrow or sooner if something crazy happens, which, you know, this week it might happen. We'll see you guys. Have a great one.